Alright, hey, we have to go right now. Open too.
Yep.
We have to go right now.
I'll flash in on their carries. You guys in the game.
Yeah.
Don't get
I'm with shielded, Darshan.
Yep, but he's not trying to go right now. Right now.
Darshan, anyone.
Yep.
Look for the end.
Yeah, I'm just gonna start hitting the Nexus.
Hey, go. Turn. Tom. Guys. Watch Gorky.
Gorky. Guys have to go in.
No. Alright, good job. Nice.
Hello and welcome to Week 3, the edition of LCS Tonight. I'm James Patterson. Joining me on the analyst desk to help recap this weekend is Sam, Kobe, Harmon, Kensler, and Aiden Zyrene Moon as we see Immortals out there taking some photos with fans at the conclusion of the day. But gentlemen, big week here in Week 3. Taking a look at the team standings before we get into any of the discussions themselves. Cloud9 still dominating the league at the top of the table, undefeated. Who is going to be challenging this squad?
Well, coming up next week, I know FlyQuest is playing them, so that will be one of the contenders. What's the other team?
The other one's Team Liquid, which is on Friday night. That's probably...
maybe not contenders, I don't know. They've been having a really rough go, Team Liquid, recently. So I think the match that everyone is going to be looking forward to is definitely going to be FlyQuest versus Cloud9. Basically old version versus new version.
Right.
And finally the Cloud.
Yeah. And FlyQuest versus Phoenix 1 as well. FlyQuest now has to play the number 1 and number 4 team next week. That's a big challenge for them. And I think that, we talk about who could beat Cloud9. Well, they played TSM at the very beginning. Still a little bit of adjustment period for them. TSM have been looking better
since then
as well. They're still having 2-1s though and dropping games.
I was gonna say TSM looks better, but even if you look at them and FlyQuest tied at 5-1 in terms of series victories, you've got an 11-3 game spread for FlyQuest and a 10-7 game spread for TSM. So definitely telling two different stories here, tied for second.
Yeah, and we have talked about how, FlyQuest, they haven't played the other two second-place teams or Cloud9 yet, and two of the losses for TSM did come from Cloud9.
Exactly.
Who we do still favor versus FlyQuest as well.
Let's go ahead and take a look at a couple of the big series here for this weekend, both of which actually included TSM in 2-1 victories over their opponents. The first of which was against CLG. Big rivalry matchup here with a little bit of a bet on the line for the owners.
Yeah, this is when we first got to see Ivern in North America, and then it just gets rolled over, and then Darshan wins the game as a tank. Yeah, didn't really have a great debut, but then Camille got locked in. A little bit of an oversight there from CLG to... I don't know what they were planning, if it was the Poppy counter into the Camille, but the Camille came up huge, and I think Hanser also got player of the game for that one.
It was not like one glimpse in that game of the Poppy succeeding against the Camille, and then for the rest of the game, it went completely the other direction. But TSM, in the second 2 games here, looked very much more on point than they had previously.
I mean, a lot of TSM fans know what it's like to lose the first game and then win the next few. It was a strategy years ago when Loco Doco was coach.
Right.
Warm up.
Yeah, you got to bring it back. But that was only Series 1 for them this week, and the second big series for them was up against P1, arguably the tougher opponent of the two, having been tied with them coming into this one. But they end up victorious 2-1 again in the series.
Yeah, I mean, and this one was a lot about junglers for me as well. I mean, Inori has been super big for Phoenix 1, and Sven Skaren had some really nice moves for himself as well in the early game for TSM. But man, look at the
TSM losing the first game again, but here they come back.
Yeah.
I think Shen was a big part of a lot of the matches this week and a lot of the victories. Shen is just incredibly powerful, and we're going to be seeing more of the global terror that he is. And this right here.
This was my Sven game.
It was so nice to see someone adapt to what is the standard Ivern start of invading off of just the single buff from Kha'Zix.
You can only have patterns exist in League of Legends for so long before they get punished, right? And the very standard play for Ivern is, prep 2 of his own camps, go steal your blue. And they did have a ward eliminating his own blue as an option, so everything came together there for Sven, and a really nice punish to get that first blood.
Yeah, it's a team effort, of course. There was a ward in the Pixel Brush that allowed Sven to just kind of camp there and wait for the Ivern Q to come over. That's the nightmare right there. Every Ivern has done that at least one time.
Freak was actually telling me it had just happened to him in solo queue as well, when he tried to jungle and he tried to play Ivern. And his very first Ivern game, he was the recipient of a play exactly like that.
But I feel like that's just kind of individual.
Apples and oranges.
Any of Freak's solo queue games probably start off that way.
Him getting first blood.
He can't even defend himself here.
He does that to people all the time.
True,
it's only fair that I take a shot back at him now when he can't defend himself. Now, there were a ton of standout performances this week to choose from, but only 5 players I just put up 4 fingers. 5 players can remain truly OP. Let's take a look at them here. First up, Impact in the top lane. 3 FlyQuest members locking up slots there from jungle, mid, and ADC, and then Biofrost filling in support.
And then, yeah, we are starting with Impact here. This guy has been an absolute monster for the team. There was a lot of discussion about Ray being added to the roster and them being practice partners, / them, grooming Ray to come in. But Impact's performances have just been outstanding and no reason to sub Ray in. The one thing I would say, Hauntzer also for me has been so big this week for TSM. He was right up there with Impact for me for this spot, but you gotta say, Impact definitely deserves it as well.
Yeah, the consistency of this guy, the split pushing, and that was my big criticism of him last year when we had lane swaps and stuff, is he was almost never teleporting in at the right times. He would sometimes get left out to dry, and now it just seems like he's right on track and he ends up there. 3 out of the 4 games got player of the game for them.
One of the big things that Reaper, their coach, has been focusing on with them and Impact as well has been communication, and it really does show, to illustrate your point.
Well, and it was a new look for them. We saw him on the Rumble this time around, so taking him off a tank, finding success there in the top lane with the Rumble definitely opens up more things for them further down the line.
Yeah, and then I want to talk about, moving over to the jungle with Moon. This guy is playing Evelyn. Nobody else is doing that. And so actually
he has the most diverse jungle pool, the Nidalee finding its way in as well, all those.
Right, and it's the really unexpected one for me as well, because Moon was the player that, was really bad before, and everybody was like, oh man, he's got the worst participation pre-15 minutes out of anybody in the entire league, and now he's just an absolute monster. It's
Yeah, not so much anymore. No, he's doing absolute work
so
for
much.
FlyQuest.
Kill leader!
Yeah, no, doing very solid. Let's talk about Alltech, though. ADC for FlyQuest, picking up OP5 here this time around. We saw the MF out of him, a nice new look for them as well. So, again, FlyQuest drafts have been very interesting and are really going to force teams to adapt when it comes to just the pick ban phase.
Yeah, and when you mention things like Miss Fortune too, everyone's like, oh yeah, she's just one of those R champions, and then you leave it. But we see positioning be so important, especially with those AD carries that do not have their own dashes. Smoothie actually was one of the first to illustrate that as a support MF, but Alltech also really strong positioning for him in teamfights. And then his other games this week as well have been super impressive. Right to the Jhin, sniping people out. Pretty much every single game for him has been really strong.
Yeah, there's another person for the AD carry position who's right behind him in terms of who could be the OP5, and that was Arrow. Arrow really had some great performances for Phoenix 1 and sniping people left and right. Ultimately, his team wasn't able to come up with the 2-0 themselves, and he did have some kind of parts where he faltered, whereas Alltech just seemed really consistent, backliner, and great positioning.
I think he still has the least deaths for AD carries as well, for Arrow. That is, yeah.
We'll have to verify that. But either way, he has been a very consistent performer for that squad here through 3 weeks. Now, we've been taking your questions throughout the day, so we're going to answer a few now. Matthias Roos asks, what is the hardest thing to avoid while casting?
Freaks puns.
Yeah,
they are unavoidable. You cannot get out of the way.
All right. Okay, but for you yourself, what's the trick?
I ramble a lot. I end up starting sentences that I don't know how to finish sometimes, and then I get caught in a weird sentence structure and have to kind of like jimmy my way out of it. And that's like the big thing, right? I should have stopped there. See,
I did it. I know. I was waiting for it. I wasn't going to say anything.
I can't avoid it.
I was just going to try and make you feel weird until you just kept talking. Kobe, what about for you? What's the hardest thing to avoid while casting?
I'm having a hard time. I mean, like, something.
Did I get it?
Let's go with that one. PG-13 cast.
Yeah, keep it things. The PG-13 realm can be sometimes difficult. All right, next up, Adam Lofald. I hope I said that correctly. Asks, with teams adding lacking engage.
Yeah, you read that right, but
I don't think. I think
your fault,
let me read down here. With teams lacking engage, the adding is and tanks taking. I can't read that. Tanks taking a slight nerf.
I got you.
A slight nerf.
Tanks taking a slight nerf. Do you see someone like I moved it, Leona coming back?
I gotta get a new prescription. Can you answer this question?
Yes. Luckily, the answer is much simpler than the question here. The answer is no. I do not see Leona coming back because, I mean, anytime you take a melee support, it's such a huge risk in the bottom lane. The mages will just punish you so hard right now.
So can you explain to me why things like Tahm Kench and Braum can still be played as melee supports, whereas Leona couldn't?
So I think that the Tahm Kench is usually a counter to something like an Ashe, and that's like preventative for the team. So you sack your laning phase, you'll go down about 10 CS or so, maybe lose your turret, but your team fighting will be a little bit better where you can keep people safe if you have hyper carries. And the Braum, we've seen it like specifically into, I would say, the misfortune to block the ultimate was the one that they used against Altec.
Right.
It didn't work. I think the melee support that we should actually push up there is Tarek, because he's got a range stun. He's got ability to keep his team
little bit of
alive,
sustain.
right? And he has the sustain for the lane.
Also, to address the overarching question of the hard engage part of this, yes, hard engage is important to have in the meta right now. It's just that you don't have to take as much risk by bringing your hard engage from elsewhere. Your top laner, super easy to bring them there because the tanks are so good right now from the top lane. So you just bring it from somewhere else. And your AD carry, even if you're bringing it from the bottom lane and you have Ashe and Jhin, these CC abilities are, or even Varus. So.
I would be curious to look up these numbers at another time, but we're also seeing just a high priority on poke compositions, which don't necessarily require hard engage, right?
But hard engages can be good, very good against it.
It can be very good against it, absolutely. But we are seeing a lot of we'll put Jace in the top lane, and so we're just going, triple poke with the Ivern to support it, and say, in the Tom Kench, even if you want to melee to protect your pokers.
Yeah, kind of the state of AD carry is have range poke, catch, and some utility for picking. But yeah, we're seeing a lot of poke as well as 1-3-1 compositions, and I think we're going to see more with people taking Shen or double TP or even having a Zed split push. Not looking too forward to that, but it does actually display
I love it. What? You don't like Zed?
It's a great. It displays a great understanding of macro game when you hit the mid game and start 1-3-1ing. But overall, it's not always going to be those gigantic team fights where people are coming out with
right. The map's more spread out at that
point.
point. You're not necessarily running into each other as often.
Yeah, I would like to comfort this guy a little bit because Kobe was so mean. Leona, I think, is a great solo queue champion, though. I think
what? We're talking about Freak? I was bringing in Freak.
No, I do think that Leona would be a great solo queue champion, though, if you're playing with a duo dominating lane. If somebody does pick a Zyra, just punish them really hard. Go in, because they're so squishy, and Leona definitely exploits that.
It's super fun when it works. It's just that it feels like it's a low percentage play, but go for it. Kill lanes are the best.
Yeah, prove these guys wrong. Show us that it's viable. Anyway, ladies and gentlemen, that's going to do it for us here in the NALCS studios. For myself, the entire live broadcast crew, thank you for watching, and we'll see you next week.
Yeah,